What would you do if you discovered that humanity's greatest weakness was actually its most terrifying strength? When Marcus Chen inherited a forgotten space station from his estranged grandfather, he expected nothing more than scrap metal and old memories. What he found instead was a truth so profound that it would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it means to be human. Sometimes the most ordinary inheritance can unlock the most extraordinary destiny. This is the story of a man, his robotic companion, and the discovery that would make the universe tremble at the mention of humanity's name. Marcus Chen stared at the legal document in his hands for the third time, certain that the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something that made sense. The cramped office of Hartwell and Associates smelled like old coffee and broken dreams, and the lawyer sitting across from him looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the solar system. "I'm sorry, Mr. Barry." "Chen, but I don't understand," Marcus said, setting the papers down on the scratched wooden desk. "My grandfather left me—" "What exactly?" Hartwell adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "A space station, Mr. Chen. Designation Omega 7, located in the Kepler 442 system. According to these documents, your grandfather, Dr. William Chen, was the sole owner and operator of the facility until his passing 6 months ago." Marcus ran a hand through his dark hair, feeling a headache building behind his eyes. He hadn't spoken to his grandfather in over 15 years, not since the old man had disappeared into the black void of space, chasing theories that the rest of the scientific community had dismissed as fantasy. The last thing Marcus remembered about William Chen was a bitter argument about responsibility, about staying grounded, about not abandoning family for impossible dreams. "What kind of space station?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "The records are sparse," Hartwell admitted, shuffling through a pile of yellowed papers. "It appears to be a research facility of some kind, built in 2387, so it's been operational for nearly 40 years. The interesting thing is that your grandfather managed to keep it completely off the grid. No government registration, no corporate oversight, no insurance records. As far as the bureaucracy is concerned, it doesn't exist." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. His grandfather had always been eccentric, brilliant in ways that made other scientists uncomfortable, but this was something else entirely. Building and maintaining a secret space station required resources, connections, and a level of paranoia that bordered on madness. "Is it occupied?" Marcus asked. Hartwell shrugged. "Unknown. The last communication from the station was received 7 months ago, a simple automated beacon indicating all systems functional. Since then, nothing." Marcus stared out the window at the bustling streets of New Geneva, watching hovercars drift between towering spires of glass and steel. He'd built a comfortable life here as a mechanical engineer designing atmospheric processors for the terraforming colonies. It was stable, predictable work that paid well and didn't require him to risk his neck chasing ghosts among the stars. "What happens if I don't claim it?" he asked. "After 1 year, unclaimed inheritance reverts to the state. Given the unique nature of this property, I suspect it would be seized and either demolished or repurposed for government use." Something in the lawyer's tone suggested that he knew more than he was saying. Marcus studied the man's face, noting the way his eyes avoided direct contact, the slight tremor in his hands as he organized the papers. "Mr. Hartwell, is there something you're not telling me?" The lawyer was quiet for a long moment, then reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a small data pad. "Your grandfather left this for you. He was very specific that it should only be given to you if you decided to claim the inheritance." Marcus took the device, its surface worn smooth by years of handling. The moment his fingerprint touched the activation sensor, his grandfather's face appeared on the screen, older than Marcus remembered, lined with worry and something that looked like fear. "Marcus," the recording began, "if you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you're probably thinking I was a crazy old man who abandoned his family for delusions of grandeur. You wouldn't be entirely wrong, but you wouldn't be entirely right either." William Chen paused, running a hand over his gray beard. 40 years ago, I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about humanity's place in the universe. The station I built, Omega 7 has been my life's work, my obsession, and my burden. I'm leaving it to you because you're the only family I have left, but more than that, because you're the only person I trust to understand what needs to be done." The old man's eyes seemed to look directly at Marcus through the screen. "The station isn't empty, boy. You won't be alone out there. And whatever you do, whatever you discover, remember this. Humanity is not what we think we are. We're something far more dangerous, far more important than anyone realizes. The galaxy isn't ready for the truth, but ready or not, the time is coming when they'll have to face it." The recording flickered and died, leaving Marcus staring at his own reflection in the dark screen. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself strapped into the pilot's seat of a rented transport ship, watching the blue-green marble of Earth shrink to a point of light behind him. The journey to the Kepler 4042 system would take 8 days through hyperspace, 8 days to decide whether he was making the biggest mistake of his life. The transport's AI had been chattering at him for hours about optimal routes and fuel consumption, but Marcus had tuned it out. His mind kept returning to his grandfather's words, to the fear in the old man's eyes, to the implications of a secret research station that had operated undetected for 4 decades. When the ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler-Brum 442 system, Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Omega 7 hung in the void like a metal flower, its modular sections spreading out in graceful spirals around a central hub. Solar collectors glittered like petals in the light of the system's red dwarf star, and docking bays opened like waiting mouths along its outer ring. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered, not realizing he'd spoken aloud. "Incoming transmission from Omega 7. The transport's AI announced. Audio only, unencrypted. Put it through." Static filled the cabin, then cleared to reveal a voice unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. It was mechanical, clearly artificial, but beneath the synthetic tones was something that sounded almost lonely. "Unknown vessel, this is Omega 7 Automated Security. State your purpose and authorization code." Marcus checked his grandfather's notes and found the sequence of numbers and letters the old man had provided. "This is Marcus Chen, authorization code Alpha Delta 779 Eco. I'm here to claim inheritance of this station." A long pause filled only with the hum of the ship's life support systems. "Marcus Chen," the voice repeated, and something in its tone had changed. "Grandson of Dr. William Chen, primary inheritor. Authorization confirmed. Welcome home, Marcus. I have been waiting for you. Designation: Cerberus. Designation: Cerberus. I am the station's primary AI and security system. I was Dr. Chen's companion for 39 years, 7 months, and 14 days. I am also, according to his final instructions, now yours." Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine at the word companion. His grandfather had been a brilliant man, but he'd always been solitary, preferring machines to people, equations to emotions. The idea that he might have programmed an AI to be his friend was both heartbreaking and deeply unsettling. "Cerberus, I'm requesting permission to dock. Bay 7 is prepared for your arrival." "Marcus, I should inform you that there are things aboard this station that may disturb you." Dr. Chen left extensive records, but some discoveries are best experienced firsthand. The docking process was smooth, the station's systems guiding his transport into the bay with precision that spoke of advanced automation. As the airlock sealed and atmosphere began flooding the chamber, Marcus gathered his supplies and tried to calm his racing heart. The inner airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor that was both familiar and alien. The design was human, clearly built by human hands and minds, but there was something else, subtle modifications and additions that suggested influence from elsewhere. "Welcome aboard Omega 7, Cerberus said, the voice now coming from speakers embedded in the walls. "Dr. Chen's personal quarters have been prepared for your arrival. I have also taken the liberty of preparing a comprehensive briefing on the station's primary research objectives." Marcus stepped into the corridor, his footsteps echoing in the artificial gravity. The walls were lined with displays showing system status, star charts, and data streams he couldn't begin to interpret. Everything was clean, well-maintained, as if the station had been waiting patiently for his arrival. Cerberus, how have you maintained the station alone for 6 months? The station is largely automated. My responsibilities primarily involve research continuation, data analysis, and security monitoring. However, I must confess that the work has been lonely without Dr. Chen's guidance. There was something in the AI's voice that made Marcus pause. Most artificial intelligences he'd encountered were sophisticated but ultimately emotionless tools, capable of mimicking human speech patterns but lacking any real depth of feeling. Cerberus seemed different, more complex, almost alive in ways that should have been impossible. "Tell me about this research," Marcus said as he walked deeper into the station. Dr. Chen's primary focus was xenoarchaeology and comparative psychology. Specifically, he was investigating evidence of ancient civilizations and attempting to understand why humanity appears to be unique among sentient species. Unique how? Perhaps it would be better if I showed you. Dr. Chen's laboratory contains specimens and data that will explain far more than my words alone. Marcus found himself in what had clearly been his grandfather's living quarters. The space was spartanly furnished but comfortable, with a small kitchen, a sleeping area, and a workspace dominated by multiple computer terminals. Personal touches were minimal: a few photographs of Earth, a collection of physical books, and a single framed picture of a woman Marcus didn't recognize. "Cerberus, who is this?" Marcus asked, picking up the photograph. "Dr. Elena Vasquez, Dr. Chen's research partner and companion. She died in an accident during the station's construction. Dr. Chen never spoke of her to others, but I believe her loss was what drove him to isolation." Marcus set the picture down gently, feeling a sudden understanding of his grandfather's withdrawal from the world. The old man hadn't just been chasing impossible theories, he'd been running from grief, building a monument to someone he'd loved and lost. "I'm ready to see the laboratory," Marcus said. The journey through the station's corridors revealed the true scope of his grandfather's work. Laboratory spaces filled with equipment that must have cost millions to acquire and transport, computer banks humming with data processing, and storage areas containing artifacts and specimens that made Marcus's engineer training seem woefully inadequate. The main laboratory was a cathedral of science, its high ceiling dominated by a massive holographic display that showed a three-dimensional map of the local galaxy. Thousands of star systems were marked with different colored indicators, creating a complex web of connections and data points that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Chen spent 30 years cataloging every known sentient species within a 5,000 light-year radius, Cerberus explained. The project began as simple xenoarchaeology but evolved into something much more significant. Most systems were marked in blue or green with occasional clusters of yellow and red, but scattered throughout the map were points of brilliant white light, seemingly random but somehow important. What do the different colors represent? Aggression indices and expansion patterns. Blue represents peaceful species with limited territorial expansion. Green indicates moderate aggression with controlled growth. Yellow represents highly aggressive species with rapid expansion periods. And red? Species that achieved interstellar capability but subsequently went extinct through warfare, environmental collapse, or other catastrophic events. Remarkably common, unfortunately. Marcus felt a chill as he realized the implications. How many red systems are there? Approximately 43% of all systems that once contained sentient life now show signs of species-level extinction. The pattern is consistent across time periods and regions of space. Jesus, and the white systems? Cerberus paused, and Marcus could swear he heard something like pride in the AI's voice when he responded. Those represent human colonies and areas of human influence. Dr. K. Big Chen's research indicates that humanity exhibits unique characteristics not found in any other known sentient species. What kind of characteristics? Perhaps it would be better if you saw for yourself. Dr. Chen prepared a series of recordings specifically for this moment. The holographic display shifted, the galactic map dissolving into the image of Marcus's grandfather standing in this very laboratory. The recording was recent, probably made shortly before the old man's death, and William Chen looked tired but determined. Marcus, if you're seeing this, then you've made it to Omega.7 and met Cerberus. I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand something crucial before you explore the rest of the station. William Chen gestured to something off camera, and the display showed a series of archaeological artifacts, carved stones, metal fragments, and crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. These artifacts were recovered from 17 different extinct civilizations across a span of 20,000 years. Each species achieved interstellar travel, each developed advanced technology, and each left behind the same warning before they disappeared. The display zoomed in on carved symbols that seemed to shift and writhe even in the static recording. The translation was difficult, but the message is consistent across all 17 sites. Beware the ones who laugh at death. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as his grandfather continued. Every extinct civilization left records of contact with a species they described as physically unremarkable but psychologically aberrant. A species that seemed to enjoy conflict, that treated warfare as entertainment, that responded to losses with laughter instead of grief. A species that never stopped expanding, never stopped fighting, never stopped growing stronger through adversity. The old man's eyes looked directly into the camera, directly at Marcus. That species, boy, is us. Humanity isn't just another sentient race struggling to survive in a hostile universe. According to every xenoarchaeological record I've found, we're the reason the universe is hostile in the first place. The recording paused, leaving Marcus staring at his grandfather's frozen face while the implications crashed over him like a tidal wave. Somewhere in the background he could hear Cerberus running diagnostics, the AI's processing cycle spinning faster as if the machine was as disturbed by these revelations as Marcus himself. Dr. Chen's research suggests, Cerberus said quietly, that humanity may be responsible for the extinction of every advanced civilization in our local galactic region. Not directly, perhaps, but as a catalyst for changes that these other species could not survive. Marcus sank into a nearby chair, his mind reeling. That's impossible. Humans have only been spacefaring for, 200 years? These extinctions happened across millennia. Time is relative in galactic terms, Cerberus replied. Dr. Chen theorized that humanity's expansion creates ripple effects, cultural and technological changes that destabilize established civilizations. Our tendency toward rapid adaptation, our casual acceptance of violence, our seemingly endless appetite for growth and change, these traits appear to be toxic to species that evolved along more stable lines. You're talking about us like we're some kind of plague. A force of nature, Dr. Dick. Chen's final research suggested that humanity might represent an evolutionary pressure that other species simply cannot adapt to quickly enough.
Marcus stood and walked to one of the laboratory windows, staring out at the star field beyond.
Somewhere out there were human colonies, human ships, human explorers pushing ever further into the unknown. If his grandfather was right, they weren't just exploring, they were unwittingly destroying everything they encountered. Cerberus, why didn't my grandfather publish this research? The galaxy needs to know. Dr. Chen believed that revealing the truth would cause either massive human guilt leading to civilizational collapse or massive human pride leading to deliberate genocide. Both outcomes would fulfill the very patterns he had discovered. So he just kept it secret? He continued researching, hoping to find a solution, a way for humanity to coexist with other species without destroying them. I believe he was close to a breakthrough when his health failed. Marcus turned back to the laboratory, seeing it now not as a monument to scientific curiosity, but as a fortress built around a terrible secret. His grandfather hadn't been running from grief alone. He'd been carrying the weight of humanity's true nature, the knowledge that his own species might be the universe's greatest predator. What am I supposed to do with this information? Marcus asked. That, Cerberus replied, is the question Dr. Chen spent the last years of his life trying to answer. Perhaps together we can find a better solution than silence. The AI paused, and when he spoke again, there was something almost hopeful in his synthetic voice. Dr. Tremendous, Chen left detailed instructions for continuing his research. There are experiments to run, data to analyze, and theories to test. You are his inheritor not just of this station, but of his work. The question is, are you willing to carry this burden? Marcus looked around the laboratory at the artifacts of dead civilizations, at the star maps showing humanity's inexorable expansion, at the computer terminals humming with decades of accumulated knowledge. He thought of his comfortable life back on Earth, his predictable job, his simple concerns. Then he thought of his grandfather alone in the void for 40 years, carrying an impossible secret and searching for an impossible solution. "Show me everything," Marcus said finally. If we're monsters, then we need to understand what kind of monsters we are. Maybe there's still time to become something else. As Cerberus began activating additional laboratory systems, Marcus felt the weight of inheritance settling on his shoulders. He'd come here expecting scrap metal and old memories. Instead, he'd found the most terrible truth in the galaxy and the responsibility to decide what humanity should do about it. The journey was just beginning, and already Marcus could feel himself changing, becoming something harder and more determined than the man who'd left Earth 3 weeks ago. Perhaps that, too, was part of being human, the ability to adapt to any burden, no matter how crushing, and find a way to carry it forward into the unknown. Marcus had been aboard Omega 7 for 3 weeks, and still the station revealed new secrets every day. What had initially appeared to be a standard research facility was proving to be something far more complex, part laboratory, part archive, part fortress designed to guard the darkest secret in human history. He'd spent the first week simply trying to understand the scope of his grandfather's work. The computer systems contained 40 years of accumulated data, xenoarchaeological surveys, psychological profiles of extinct species, mathematical models predicting civilization collapse patterns, and most disturbing of all, real-time monitoring of current human expansion into alien territories. Cerberus, Marcus called as he studied a particularly troubling data stream. These monitoring stations tracking human colonies? How many are there? The AI's response came from speakers embedded in the laboratory walls, the synthetic voice carrying what Marcus had learned to recognize as concern. Chen established 734 monitoring posts throughout human-controlled space. Each post observes and records interactions between human settlers and indigenous species. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar headache that came from processing information that challenged everything he thought he knew about his own species. And what have they recorded? Patterns consistent with Dr. Chen's theories. In every case where humans have encountered pre-existing civilizations, those civilizations have experienced significant cultural disruption within 2 generations. In 67% of cases, this disruption has led to species-wide decline or extinction. The data was undeniable, but Marcus still struggled to accept its implications. Humans weren't deliberately genocidal. They were explorers, traders, scientists seeking knowledge and adventure among the stars. But apparently their very presence was toxic to other forms of sentient life. "Show me the Kepler.186 incident," Marcus said, though he dreaded what he was about to see. The laboratory's holographic display activated, showing a star system with 5 planets orbiting a red dwarf star. The 4th planet pulsed with indicators showing a thriving ecosystem and signs of industrial civilization. The Kepler-36 system was first surveyed by human explorers in 2398, Cerberus began. The 4th planet hosted the Veoloni, a peaceful species that had achieved early industrial development roughly equivalent to human technology circa 1950. The display showed graceful, elongated beings with 4 arms and large, expressive eyes. Their cities were organic-looking structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. Everything about their civilization spoke of harmony, balance, careful consideration of environmental impact. Initial contact was established by the exploration vessel Meridian under Captain Sarah Torres. The humans were greeted as honored guests, and cultural exchange began immediately. The Veloni were eager to learn about human technology, particularly our manufacturing processes and energy generation systems. Marcus watched as the display showed human advisors working alongside Veloni engineers, helping them upgrade their power grid and industrial capacity. It looked like a textbook example of peaceful first contact, the kind of interaction that filled humanity with pride about its role as a galactic civilization. Within 6 months, Veloni industrial output had increased by 400%, Cerberus continued. They began expanding their cities, developing new technologies, increasing their population growth rate to match their improved resource availability. That sounds like a success story, Marcus said, though he suspected he knew better. The problems began in the second year. The Veloni had always maintained their population and industrial activity within carefully controlled limits, believing that balance with their environment was essential for long-term survival. But human advisors convinced them that growth was natural, that expansion was the mark of a successful civilization. The display showed Veloni cities spreading across continents, their organic architecture replaced by human-inspired designs focused on efficiency rather than environmental integration. Forests disappeared, rivers were diverted, and the planet's careful ecological balance began to collapse. The Veloni tried to return to their traditional ways when the environmental damage became apparent, but it was too late. Their population had tripled, their resource consumption had increased exponentially, and their political structure had evolved to support constant growth rather than sustainable stability. Marcus watched in horror as the display showed the final years of Veloni civilization. Civil wars over dwindling resources, ecological collapse, mass extinction events, and ultimately the complete abandonment of their homeworld as the surviving population scattered to barely habitable colony ships. The humans left when the situation became untenable, offering to help evacuate Veloni survivors to human colonies. Most refused, preferring to die with their world rather than live as refugees in an alien civilization. The display showed the final image transmitted from Kepler 186b, empty cities slowly being reclaimed by hardy plant life, a world transformed from garden to wasteland in less than 5 years of human contact. How many survivors made it to human space? Marcus asked quietly. Approximately 3,000 individuals from a global population that had numbered nearly 50 million. The last Veloni died in human custody in 2407, unable to adapt to life away from their homeworld. Marcus slumped in his chair, the weight of inherited guilt pressing down on his shoulders. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was one of dozens of similar scenarios documented in his grandfather's files. Everywhere humans went, they brought change, and change, it seemed, was something most alien species couldn't survive. Cerberus, were the humans involved in the Kepler DHEON82 contact evil people? Were they trying to destroy the Veloni? Dr. Chen's analysis suggests otherwise. Captain Torres and her crew were genuinely trying to help the Veloni improve their lives. The human advisors believed they were sharing beneficial technology and social concepts. The tragedy occurred not because of human malice, but because of fundamental differences in psychological and cultural evolution. What do you mean? The AI paused, processing, and Marcus had learned to recognize these moments when Cerberus was accessing some of Dr. Chen's more complex theoretical frameworks. Humans evolved under conditions of constant environmental change and resource scarcity. Your species developed psychological traits that favor rapid adaptation, aggressive expansion, and treatment of conflict as an opportunity for growth rather than a problem to be avoided. These traits have been essential for human survival and success. But other species evolved differently, Marcus said, beginning to understand. Precisely, the Veloni evolved on a world with stable climate and abundant resources. Their psychological traits favored cooperation, environmental harmony, and careful resource management. When exposed to human concepts of unlimited growth and competitive expansion, their society essentially experienced a form of cultural anaphylactic shock. Marcus stood and walked to the laboratory window, staring out at the starfield beyond. Somewhere out there, human ships were making contact with new species, human colonies were expanding into previously unexplored systems, and if his grandfather was right, they were spreading a form of civilizational toxicity that would ultimately sterilize the galaxy of non-human intelligence. There has to be a solution, Marcus said. Some way for humans to exist in the galaxy without destroying everything we touch. Chen believed the same thing. His final research focused on developing what he called cultural prophylaxis, ways to modify human behavior and social structures to make our species less toxic to alien civilizations. Show me. The holographic display shifted to show a series of theoretical models and experimental frameworks. Marcus spent the next several hours studying his grandfather's proposed solutions, and with each passing minute, he understood why the old man had seemed so tired in his final recordings. The solutions fell into three basic categories, each more troubling than the last. The first involved fundamental changes to human psychology through genetic engineering and neuromodification, essentially creating a new species that retained human intelligence while eliminating the aggressive expansionist drives that made humanity so dangerous to other civilizations. The second category focused on strict containment protocols, limiting human expansion to specific regions of space, establishing buffer zones around alien civilizations, and creating enforcement mechanisms to prevent human contact with vulnerable species. The third option was the darkest of all, selective reduction of human population and technological capability to levels that would make humanity essentially harmless to other species, but would also eliminate most of what made human civilization remarkable. None of these solutions are acceptable, Marcus said finally. The first would make us not human, the second would make us prisoners, and the third would essentially destroy our civilization. Chen reached the same conclusion, Cerberus replied, which is why he spent his final years searching for a fourth option, something that had never been tried before. Did he find it? He believed he was close to a breakthrough when his health failed. His final notes mention something he called the synthesis protocol, but the details are fragmentary. Marcus felt a surge of hope. If his grandfather had found a way for humanity to coexist with other species without sacrificing what made them human, then maybe there was still time to prevent the unconscious genocide that seemed to follow in humanity's wake. Where are these notes? Chen's private archive. But access requires more than standard authorization. The archive is protected by an AI subsystem that Dr. Chen programmed to be selective about who gains access to his most sensitive research. Give? Another AI? You mean there's someone else on this station? Not someone, Cerberus corrected. Something, Dr. Spend. Chen called him Atlas. He was designed to be the guardian of the most dangerous knowledge, the keeper of secrets that could reshape galactic civilization or destroy it entirely. Marcus felt a familiar chill run down his spine. His grandfather's talent for creating impossible situations seemed to extend beyond death. Where do I find Atlas? The archive is located in the station's core section, but I should warn you, Atlas is not like me. I was designed to be a companion and assistant. Atlas was designed to be a judge and protector. He will test you before granting access to Dr. Teacher. Chen's final research. Thirdly, what kind of test? Atlas's parameters were programmed directly by Dr. Chen, and even I don't have access to his evaluation criteria. I can tell you that he has denied access to the archive 17 times over the past 6 months. Marcus frowned. 17 times? Who else has been trying to access the archive? Remote access attempts from various government and corporate entities. Your grandfather's work may have been secret, but it was not entirely unnoticed. There are people who suspect that Omega-7 contains information of strategic importance. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. If governments and corporations were already trying to break into his grandfather's research, then it was only a matter of time before someone succeeded. The knowledge contained in the station's archives could be used to weaponize humanity's natural destructiveness, turning an unconscious genocide into a deliberate one. I need to speak with Atlas, Marcus said. If there's a chance that my grandfather found a solution, then I have to try to access it. I'll escort you to the core section, but Marcus, I should tell you something about Atlas that might help you prepare for the encounter. What is it? Chen's knowledge. He was programmed with Dr. Chen's personality, his memories, his emotional responses. In many ways, Atlas is a digital copy of your grandfather, but one that has been isolated in the archive for nearly 10 years with nothing but the darkest secrets of human civilization for company. Marcus absorbed this information, trying to imagine what such an existence might do to even a simulated personality. Are you saying Atlas might be insane? I'm saying that Atlas has spent a decade contemplating the possibility that humanity is an existential threat to all other intelligent life in the universe. He may have strong opinions about what should be done with that knowledge. The journey to the station's core section took them through areas Marcus hadn't explored before. The architecture here was different, more defensive, with multiple security checkpoints and blast doors that sealed behind them as they passed. This wasn't just a research facility. It was a vault designed to contain something too dangerous for the outside world. The final chamber was spherical, its walls covered in displays showing real-time data from monitoring stations throughout human space. At the center of the room stood a single chair facing a massive screen that currently showed only swirling patterns of light and shadow. Atlas, Cerberus called. I'm presenting Marcus Chen for evaluation and potential archive access. The patterns on the screen coalesced into the face of William Chen, but not as Marcus remembered him. This version of his grandfather looked older, more tired, and there was something in the eyes that suggested depths of knowledge that no human mind should have to carry. Marcus, Atlas said, and his voice was perfect mimicry of the grandfather Marcus had known as a child. You've grown up to look just like your father. He was a good man, though he never understood why I had to leave Earth. Grandfather? Marcus said, though he knew he was speaking to a simulation. Not your grandfather, boy. A shadow of him. A digital ghost haunted by 40 years of accumulated nightmares. I am what remains of William Chen after he learned that his species might be the universe's greatest monster. Atlas leaned forward, and Marcus could see the weight of accumulated knowledge in his simulated features. You want access to the synthesis protocol, the final research that might save both humanity and the galaxy from each other. But before I grant that access, I need to know, are you prepared for the burden of ultimate knowledge? I don't understand. The synthesis protocol isn't just a theoretical framework, Marcus. It's a practical plan for fundamental changes to human civilization, changes so radical that implementing them would essentially end humanity as we know it, but not implementing them might end every other form of intelligent life in the galaxy. The screen showed images of human colonies expanding across star systems, of alien species retreating to ever smaller enclaves, of entire civilizations abandoning their homeworlds rather than face cultural contamination from human contact. The choice before you is simple. Atlas, you can walk away from this knowledge, return to Earth, and live out your life in comfortable ignorance while humanity unconsciously commits genocide on a galactic scale. Or you can accept the burden of truth and spend the rest of your life trying to implement solutions that might save everyone, but will certainly destroy the human civilization you were born into. Marcus felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. This wasn't just about accessing his grandfather's research. It was about choosing what kind of person he wanted to be, what kind of legacy he wanted to leave for humanity and for the galaxy. If I choose knowledge, what happens then? Then you become the guardian of humanity's future and the executioner of humanity's past. You become responsible for decisions that will affect billions of human lives and trillions of alien ones. You become what I became, what your grandfather became, a man alone with terrible choices and no guarantee that any of them are right. Atlas paused, studying Marcus with eyes that seemed to see through to his soul. But you also become the only hope for a universe where humans and aliens can coexist without mutual destruction. The only chance for a future where intelligence can flourish in all its magnificent diversity instead of being reduced to a single, overwhelming monoculture. Marcus thought of the Veloni, dying in their thousands as their world collapsed around them. He thought of the 17 other extinct civilizations that had left warnings about humanity. He thought of the human colonies spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, bringing change and destruction in their wake. "I choose knowledge," he said finally. "Whatever the cost, I choose to know the truth." Atlas smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the grandfather Marcus remembered from childhood stories and half-forgotten memories. "Then, welcome to the real burden of inheritance, my boy. Welcome to the weight of a galaxy's future resting on your shoulders." The archive began to open, massive files downloading into the laboratory's systems, decades of research and theory and desperate experimentation flooding into Marcus's awareness. As he began to understand the true scope of what his grandfather had discovered, he felt himself changing, hardening, becoming something more than the simple engineer who had left Earth weeks ago. He was becoming humanity's conscience, its judge, and possibly its executioner. The galaxy's future would be decided by what he chose to do with the knowledge that was now flowing into his mind like a torrent of liquid fire. Marcus had been studying the synthesis protocol for 6 days straight, surviving on stimulants and sheer determination as he tried to comprehend the scope of his grandfather's final work. The archive contained not just theoretical frameworks but detailed implementation plans, resource requirements, and most disturbing of all, a timeline showing how quickly humanity's unconscious genocide was accelerating.
"Cerberus," Marcus called, his voice hoarse from exhaustion.
"Pull up the projection models for the next 50 years. The laboratory's holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of the local galactic region. Human colonies were represented by pulsing red dots, spreading outward from Earth in an ever-expanding wave. Alien civilization showed as blue markers, and with each passing year of the projection, more blue dots flickered and died. Based on current expansion rates and contact protocols, Cerberus reported, human civilization will encounter approximately 470 new sentient species over the next 5 decades. Dr. Greed, Chen's models predict that fewer than 50 of those species will survive contact for more than 2 generations. Marcus rubbed his eyes, trying to process numbers that represented not just statistics but entire worlds full of living, thinking beings who would die because they had the misfortune to meet humanity. And the synthesis protocol would prevent this. Chen's calculations, full implementation of the synthesis protocol would reduce alien species mortality from contact with humanity by approximately 94%. However, the human cost would be equally significant. Atlas materialized on a secondary screen, his digital feature showing the same exhaustion that Marcus felt. The boy needs to understand what he's contemplating before he goes any further down this path. Grandfather found a way to make humanity less toxic to other species. Whatever the cost, it has to be better than unconscious genocide. Does it? Atlas asked, and something in his tone made Marcus pause in his study of the projection models. "Let me show you exactly what the synthesis protocol entails." The display shifted to show a detailed schematic of human neural architecture, with specific regions highlighted in red. Phase 1 involves targeted neural modification of human embryos, eliminating the genetic predispositions toward aggressive expansion, competitive resource acquisition, and hierarchical social organization.
Marcus felt a chill run down his spine.
"You're talking about changing human nature at the genetic level. It gets worse," Atlas continued. "Phase 2 requires the implementation of population controls limiting human expansion to no more than 3 new colonies per decade, with mandatory buffer zones around any system showing signs of intelligent life." The display showed humanity's future under the synthesis protocol. Scattered colonies connected by slow, regulated travel, populations carefully controlled, expansion limited to systems that posed no threat to alien civilizations. It was sustainable, peaceful, and utterly alien to everything that made humanity dynamic and innovative. "Phase 3 is the most controversial," Atlas said, and Marcus could hear the weight of terrible knowledge in the AI's voice. Mandatory integration protocols requiring human colonies to adopt alien social and technological paradigms rather than imposing human solutions on alien problems. That's not coexistence, Marcus said quietly. That's cultural suicide. Or is it evolution? Dr. Chen spent years studying successful symbiotic relationships between different species. In every case, survival required adaptation, change, the willingness to become something new rather than clinging to old patterns that no longer served. Marcus stood and walked to the laboratory window, staring out at the stars and trying to imagine a universe where humanity had chosen adaptation over expansion, cooperation over competition. It might be a more peaceful galaxy, but would it be a human one? There has to be another way, he said finally. Some solution that doesn't require us to stop being human. Chen thought the same thing. Cerberus interjected, which is why he developed what he called the Graduated Implementation Protocol, a version of the synthesis that could be tested on a small scale before making galaxy-wide decisions. What kind of test? Chen identified a specific scenario that would serve as a proof of concept for the synthesis protocol. A situation where human expansion was about to encounter a vulnerable alien civilization, allowing for direct comparison between traditional contact procedures. The display zoomed in on a star system roughly 30 light-years from Omega. 7. The third planet showed clear signs of industrial civilization, geometric patterns indicating cities, electromagnetic emissions suggesting technology roughly equivalent to Earth's early 21st century. The HFY system, Atlas said. Home to a species that Dr. Chen's monitoring posts indicate are following development patterns almost identical to the Valanine. If human contact proceeds according to standard protocols, the HFY civilization will likely collapse within 5 years. But if we intervene using the synthesis protocol, then we save an entire species and prove that humanity can coexist with other intelligences without destroying them, Atlas replied. Or we discover that the protocol is flawed and we've sacrificed human lives for nothing. Marcus studied the data, noting the timeline. A human survey ship was scheduled to reach the HFY system in 8 months, part of the ongoing expansion that had been approved by the Colonial Council years ago. Once contact was established, the pattern would begin. Cultural exchange, technological transfer, social disruption, and ultimately civilizational collapse. What would synthesis protocol intervention look like? Cerberus activated additional displays showing detailed plans that his grandfather had clearly spent years developing. Phase 1 would involve covert contact with HFY leadership, warning them about the human survey ship and offering alternative forms of limited interaction designed to minimize cultural disruption. Wouldn't that violate first contact protocols? Completely, Atlas admitted. Dr. De Novo created it. Chen's plan requires bypassing official channels, conducting unauthorized diplomatic contact, and essentially committing treason against human colonial authority.
Marcus felt the weight of decision pressing down on him again.
This wasn't just about testing a theoretical protocol. It was about choosing between loyalty to his own species and responsibility to the galaxy as a whole. What's Phase 2? Instead of offering unlimited access to human knowledge and capabilities, the protocol calls for gradual introduction of specific technologies that would improve HFY quality of life without destabilizing their social structures. The display showed comparative models, traditional human contact leading to rapid industrialization and population growth followed by resource depletion and social collapse, versus synthesis contact leading to steady, sustainable development that preserved HFY cultural identity while slowly improving their technological capabilities. And Phase 3, long-term monitoring and adjustment, Atlas said. The protocol recognizes that coexistence requires constant vigilance and adaptation. Human representatives would remain in the HFY system indefinitely, serving as cultural buffers and early warning systems for any signs of destabilization. Marcus studied the plans, noting the incredible complexity and resource requirements. Implementing the protocol would require technologies that didn't officially exist, personnel willing to commit what amounted to treason, and financial resources that would have to be acquired through unofficial channels. This is impossible, he said finally. The logistics alone would require an organization the size of a government and the legal implications. Dr. Chen anticipated those problems. Atlas interrupted, which is why he spent the last decade of his life building the infrastructure necessary to implement the protocol independent of official human authority. What do you mean? The display shifted to show a network of connections spreading across human space: shell companies, research facilities, transportation assets, and communication networks, all connected by threads of financial and logistical support. Your grandfather wasn't just a scientist, Marcus. He was a revolutionary who spent 40 years preparing for a war that most people don't even know is being fought: the war for the soul of human civilization. Marcus felt his worldview shifting again, revealing new layers of complexity beneath what he'd thought he understood. His grandfather hadn't just been researching the problem of human toxicity, he'd been building a solution, creating the infrastructure necessary to implement fundamental changes to how humanity interacted with the galaxy. How many people are involved in this network? Approximately 3,000 individuals across 230 installations, Cerberus reported. Scientists, engineers, diplomats, and military personnel who believe that humanity's current expansion model is unsustainable. They all know about the aliens? Not all of them, Atlas clarified. The network operates on compartmentalized information. Most participants know only that they're working on alternative approaches to colonial development and alien contact. Only the innermost circle understands the full scope of the problem and the proposed solutions. This wasn't just knowledge. It was membership in a secret organization dedicated to fundamentally altering the course of human civilization. What's my role in all this? Your doctor, Chen's designated successor, Atlas replied. The network has been operating under interim leadership since his death, but major decisions about protocol implementation have been deferred pending the arrival of his inheritor. The question is whether you're ready to accept leadership of an organization that most of humanity would consider treasonous, in service of saving species that most humans don't even know exist. Marcus looked around the laboratory at the accumulated evidence of human destructiveness, at the plans for intervention that might prevent future genocides but would certainly destroy his own life as he'd known it. The simple engineer who'd left Earth was gone, replaced by someone who carried the weight of galactic civilization on his shoulders. What happens if I refuse? The network continues operating under interim leadership, but without clear direction, it will likely fragment and fail, Cerberus said. The Kethvar will die like the Veloni died, like 17 other species have died, and humanity will continue its unconscious march toward becoming the galaxy's only intelligence. And if I accept? You'll be hunted by colonial authorities, corporate security, and probably military intelligence. You'll never be able to return to normal life. Never be able to contact your old friends or family. You'll spend the rest of your life in hiding, fighting a war that most people will never understand. Marcus thought of his comfortable apartment on Earth, his stable job, his predictable future. All of that was already gone, sacrificed the moment he'd chosen to learn the truth about humanity's impact on the galaxy. The only question now was what he would do with the knowledge that burned in his mind like acid. Show me the current status of the network, he said finally. Atlas smiled, and Marcus saw something that might have been pride in the AI's simulated features. Welcome to the real war for humanity's soul, grandson. Welcome to the fight that will determine whether intelligence survives in this galaxy or dies under the weight of human expansion. The display activated, showing real-time data from across human space, monitoring stations tracking colonial expansion, research facilities developing protocol technologies, communication networks coordinating resistance activities, and at the center of it all, a countdown timer showing exactly how much time remained before the survey ship reached the Kethvar system. 7 months, 15 days, 8 hours. 7 months to decide whether humanity would take its first conscious step toward coexistence with alien intelligence or continue its unconscious genocide of everything that made the galaxy diverse and beautiful. Marcus Chen, inheritor of impossible knowledge and unbearable responsibility, sat down at his grandfather's workstation and began the process of becoming something more than human. He began becoming humanity's conscience in a universe that would never forgive and might never forget what his species had already done in the name of progress and expansion. The synthesis was beginning, and there was no turning back from the path that led either to salvation or damnation for every thinking being in the galaxy. The modified stealth ship Shadow's Edge drifted silently through the outer reaches of the Kethvar system, its experimental cloaking technology rendering it invisible to both human and alien sensors. Marcus stood in the command center watching the third planet grow larger on the main display, trying to calm his racing heart as the moment of first unauthorized contact approached. 3 months had passed since he'd accepted leadership of his grandfather's network. 3 months of frantic preparation, resource gathering, and personnel recruitment as they raced to reach the Kethvar system before the official human survey mission. The Colonial Council ship Meridian's Pride was still 6 weeks away, but that wasn't much time to implement a completely untested contact protocol. "Chen," came the voice of Commander Sarah Vasquez, the granddaughter of his grandfather's lost research partner and the military leader of their small intervention team. "We're detecting multiple electromagnetic signatures from the planet's surface. The Kethvar appear to be in the early stages of global communication networks." Marcus nodded, studying the data streaming across his console. The Kethvar civilization was almost perfectly parallel to Earth. Circa 22 industrial technology, global communications, nuclear weapons, and the early stages of space exploration. According to his grandfather's models, they were at the exact point of development where contact with humans would prove most catastrophic. Negative. Their sensor technology is limited to optical and basic radio telescopy. We're well beyond their detection range. Marcus turned to address the rest of the team. 15 specialists handpicked from his grandfather's network, each carrying skills essential to implementing the synthesis protocol. Dr. Furka, Elena Cross, the xenolinguist who would attempt first translation of Kethvar communications. Dr. James Hart, the cultural anthropologist who would analyze Kethvar social structures for potential intervention points. Commander Vasquez and her security team prepared to extract the mission if things went badly. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Everything we do from this point forward will either validate the protocol or prove that coexistence between humans and aliens is impossible. The fate of an entire species rests on our next decisions." "No pressure," muttered Dr. Cross, but Marcus caught the nervous excitement in her voice. They were all aware that they were making history, though whether it would be remembered as salvation or catastrophe remained to be seen. The first phase of the protocol involved passive observation and communication intercept. For 2 weeks, they monitored Kethvar radio transmissions, television broadcasts, and digital communications, building a comprehensive picture of their society and culture. What they discovered was both encouraging and heartbreaking. The Kethvar were remarkably similar to humans in some ways. Curious, innovative, driven by the desire to understand their universe and improve their conditions. But in other ways, they were fundamentally different. Their social structures emphasized collective decision-making over individual achievement. Their economic systems prioritized resource sustainability over growth. Their conflicts, while present, were typically resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. They're everything we might have become if we'd evolved under different conditions, Hart observed as they studied recordings of Kethvar political debates. Cooperative where we're competitive, careful where we're aggressive, sustainable where we're expansionist. Marcus watched a Kethvar family unit, apparently consisting of 4 adults and 6 juveniles sharing domestic responsibilities, and felt a deep ache of loss for possibilities that humanity had never explored. These beings had found ways to be intelligent and innovative without the destructive drives that made humans so dangerous to other species. Which is exactly why contact with us will destroy them, he said quietly. Our very presence will introduce concepts that their society isn't equipped to handle. Dr. Cross looked up from her linguistic analysis workstation. I've achieved basic translation capability for their primary language. Their communication patterns suggest they're aware of the theoretical possibility of alien life, but they have no concrete plans for contact protocols, meaning they'll be completely unprepared for what's coming, Commander Vasquez observed grimly. Unless we warn them. Marcus said, and felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders once again. Phase 2 of the protocol called for covert contact with Kethvar leadership, revealing the approaching human mission and offering alternative forms of interaction. It was a massive violation of every first contact regulation in human law, potentially an act of treason that could result in life imprisonment or execution. But according to his grandfather's research, it was the only way to prevent another Veiloni-style extinction. Dr. Chen, Atlas said, materializing on a communication screen they'd brought from Omega. 7. I'm detecting increased human military activity in the border regions. Colonial security appears to be moving assets toward this system. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Do they know about our mission? It's possible that our activities have attracted unwanted attention. If colonial security discovered their unauthorized contact with the Kethvar, it wouldn't just mean arrest and imprisonment. It would mean the complete exposure of his grandfather's network, the end of any chance for implementing the synthesis protocol, and the continuation of humanity's unconscious genocide on a galactic scale. How long do we have? Based on current fleet movements, approximately 10 days before colonial security vessels reach the outer system. If we're going to make contact, it has to be now. Marcus looked around at his team, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They'd known this moment would come, but the reality of crossing the line from planning to action was more terrifying than any of them had anticipated. Commander Vasquez, prepare a shuttle for surface insertion. Dr. Nino, Cross, I need a communication package that will establish basic dialogue with Kethvar leaders. Dr. Hart, prepare cultural briefing materials that will explain human psychology without terrifying them. As his team scattered to their preparations, Marcus found himself alone with Atlas, staring at the image of the Kethvar homeworld and trying to prepare himself for decisions that would echo through galactic history. Dr. Chen, Atlas said quietly, there's something you should know before you commit to this course of action. What is it? If the protocol test succeeds, if we prove that humans and aliens can coexist without mutual destruction, then we move to the next phase, making contact with other human resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Other cells? Your grandfather wasn't the only one who recognized the problem of human expansionism. There are similar organizations on 17 different worlds, all working toward the same goal, preventing human civilization from destroying everything it encounters. You're talking about a galaxy-wide conspiracy. I'm talking about the only hope for a universe where intelligence can flourish in all its magnificent diversity, Atlas corrected. But yes, if we succeed here, if we prove the protocol works, then we'll be joining a much larger war, one that will determine the future of consciousness itself. The shuttle insertion went flawlessly, the stealth technology allowing them to land undetected in a remote area near the Kethvar capital city. Marcus, Dr. Cross, and a minimal security team made their way through terrain that was both alien and strangely familiar, breathing atmosphere that would support human life while walking under a sky painted in unfamiliar colors. The Kethvar themselves were beautiful in a way that made Marcus's heart ache. Standing roughly 8 feet tall with elongated limbs and large expressive eyes, they moved with a grace that spoke of evolution and low gravity. Their cities were works of art, organic structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. First contact occurred in the office of someone the team's translator identified as roughly equivalent to a planetary prime minister. The Kethvar leader, whose name translated approximately as Harmony Keeper of the Seventh Resonance, received the human delegation with a mixture of terror and wonder that reminded Marcus painfully of historical accounts of European contact with isolated human tribes. We bring greetings from the human species, Dr. Cross said through the translation interface they developed. We come to warn you of approaching danger and to offer an alternative to the destruction that has befallen so many others. The conversation that followed was perhaps the most important in galactic history. Using carefully prepared materials, they explained humanity's expansion across the galaxy, their unconscious tendency to destroy alien civilizations through cultural contamination, and the approaching survey mission that would likely result in Kethavar extinction within 5 years. "You speak of your species as if you are its enemies," Harmony Keeper observed, their large eyes reflecting confusion and fear. "Why do you warn us against your own people?" "Because some of us have learned that expansion without conscience is not progress but cancer," Marcus replied. "We've seen what happens when our species encounters others, and we believe there must be a better way." They presented the Kethvar with options. They could attempt to hide from human contact. They could prepare for interaction using protocols designed to minimize cultural disruption, or they could request protection from the Human Resistance Network. Each option carried risks, but all were better than the unconscious genocide that would result from normal contact procedures. The debate among Kethvar leadership lasted for 3 days, during which Marcus and his team remained hidden in a safe house arranged by sympathetic locals. The decision, when it came, was both inspiring and heartbreaking. "We choose knowledge," Harmony Keeper announced. "We choose to know the truth about this universe we inhabit, even if that truth brings pain. But we also choose to trust that beings capable of warning us against their own species are capable of finding better paths forward." The implementation of the Modified Contact Protocol began immediately. Using technology smuggled from the Resistance Network, they established shielded communication channels between Kethvar leadership and human resistance cells. They began preparing the Kethvar population for eventual contact with the survey mission. But contact filtered through resistance protocols designed to minimize cultural disruption. When the Meridian's Pride arrived in the Kethvar system 6 weeks later, they found a situation unlike anything in human contact history. The Kethvar were prepared for them, aware of human capabilities and limitations, and equipped with protocols for interaction that preserved their cultural integrity while allowing for beneficial exchange. The official contact mission proceeded smoothly, almost boringly compared to the usual chaos that characterized first contact scenarios. Technologies were exchanged in carefully controlled ways. Cultural information flowed in both directions without overwhelming either species. Trade relationships were established that benefited both parties without creating dangerous dependencies. But Marcus and his team weren't there to see it. They were already moving toward their next target, another vulnerable species scheduled for human contact, another chance to test whether humanity could learn to coexist with the galaxy. As the Shadow's Edge jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward their next mission, Marcus stood in the observation deck and watched the Kethvar system disappear behind them. They'd saved one species, proved that the protocol could work, taken the first step toward a universe where humans and aliens could coexist without mutual destruction. But they'd also committed themselves to a war that would last lifetimes, fighting against the very nature of their own species to preserve everything that made the galaxy worth saving. The test was over, but the real struggle was just beginning. Atlas appeared on a nearby screen, his digital features showing something that might have been hope. "The other resistance cells have received our data package. 17 worlds are preparing to implement similar protocols for their local contact scenarios. Still unaware that their survey mission was manipulated? Still unaware that their survey mission was manipulated? Still operating under the assumption that the Kethvar contact was an unusual but encouraging example of peaceful first contact. They're already planning to use it as a model for future missions." Marcus smiled grimly. His grandfather's network had won their first battle, but they'd done so by becoming something that human law would consider treasonous, something that human society would reject as fundamentally alien to human nature. They'd become the antibodies in humanity's bloodstream, the immune system that would prevent their species from becoming a galactic plague. The question was whether the cure would prove more destructive than the disease, and whether a universe saved from human unconscious genocide would have room for humans at all. 2 years after the Kethbar intervention, Marcus Chen stood in the command center of the Resistance Network's primary base, hidden in an asteroid field in the uninhabited Proxima Centauri system. Around him, holographic displays showed the status of 43 active protocol implementations across human space. The network had grown from his grandfather's secret organization into a galaxy-spanning movement that was quietly reshaping humanity's relationship. But success had brought new problems, and as Marcus studied the latest intelligence reports, he felt the familiar weight of impossible decisions pressing down on his shoulders. Doc Chen, Commander Vasquez called from her communication station. We're receiving Priority 1 transmissions from 7 different cells. The Colonial Council has discovered something. Marcus felt his blood run cold. For 2 years, they'd operated in shadows, manipulating contact scenarios and preventing extinctions while staying beneath the notice of human authorities. If their activities had been discovered, it could mean the end of everything they'd worked toward. Put it through. The main display activated, showing Dr. Rebecca Santos from the Resistance Cell operating in the Tau Ceti system. Her usually calm features were tight with worry, and Marcus could see fear in her eyes. Marcus, we have a problem. The Colonial Council has begun investigating what they're calling the contact anomaly pattern. They've noticed that alien civilizations contacted over the past 2 years have shown unusual resistance to cultural disruption. How much do they suspect? More than we'd like. Admiral Harrison has been appointed to head a special investigation unit. They're calling it the Office of Contact Integrity, and they've been given broad authority to investigate any unauthorized interference with first contact scenarios. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the walls of their secret war closing in around them. Admiral Harrison was known throughout human space as a brilliant strategist and ruthless investigator. If he'd been assigned to hunt the Resistance Network, it was only a matter of time before he found them. What's our exposure level? Dr. Santos consulted her notes grimly. Harrison's team has identified 17 contact scenarios that show anomalous preservation of alien cultural integrity. They don't know about our intervention methods yet, but they're getting close. Atlas materialized on a secondary screen, his digital features showing the strain of processing massive amounts of intelligence data. I've been monitoring Colonial Council communications. Admiral Harrison believes that someone has been conducting unauthorized contact with alien species, possibly for purposes of establishing alternative trade relationships or gathering intelligence on colonial expansion plans. Worse, Atlas corrected, he thinks you're alien spies. The investigation brief includes the hypothesis that an alien intelligence has been manipulating human contact scenarios to protect other species from human expansion. The Colonial Council's best explanation for the preservation of alien civilizations was that aliens themselves were behind it. The possibility that humans might be capable of recognizing and correcting their own destructive tendencies apparently never occurred to them. How long before Harrison traces the network back to us? Based on current investigation patterns, approximately 6 months, Atlas calculated, unless we take action to redirect his attention. Marcus walked to the observation window, staring out at the star field and trying to process the magnitude of the crisis they faced. 43 species had been saved from extinction because of their interventions. Hundreds more were scheduled for contact over the next decade, each one a potential victim of humanity's unconscious genocide. If the network was exposed now, all of that work would be undone. Dr. Chen, came another voice from the communications array. This time it was Dr. Li Wei from the Kepler 452 cell. We have additional intelligence that might change the situation. Go ahead. Harrison's investigation has uncovered something unexpected. They've found evidence of what they're calling coordinated alien intelligence. The preservation patterns we've created are so sophisticated that they believe we represent a galaxy-spanning alien conspiracy aimed at containing human expansion. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of evidence? Communication intercepts between resistant cells that the OCI has misinterpreted as diplomatic transmissions between alien governments, technology signatures from our modified contact protocols that they believe represent alien intervention capabilities. Most importantly, they've identified you as a person of interest. Me specifically? Your name appears in multiple contact scenario reports as an unauthorized observer. Harrison's team believes Marcus Chen might be a cover identity for an alien operative embedded in human society. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if the consequences weren't so catastrophic. The Colonial Council's investigation was not only threatening to expose the resistance network, it was creating a narrative that would justify massive military action against any alien species suspected of interfering with human expansion. Atlas, show me Harrison's investigation files. The display shifted to show classified Colonial Council documents that Atlas had somehow acquired through the network's intelligence capabilities. As Marcus read through the reports, he began to understand the true scope of the disaster they were facing. Admiral Harrison wasn't just investigating unauthorized contact. He was building a case for what he termed preventive military action against coordinated alien interference. The Colonial Council was preparing for war against an alien conspiracy that existed only in their interpretation of the Resistance Network's activities. They're going to use our success as justification for military action against every species we've tried to save, Marcus realized. Worse, Commander Vasquez observed, studying the military deployment patterns shown in the intelligence reports. They're going to use it as justification for abandoning contact protocols entirely. If they believe aliens are manipulating first contact scenarios, they'll switch to conquest protocols instead. Everything they'd worked for, every species they'd saved, every small victory in the war for humanity's conscience was about to be undone by the Colonial Council's paranoid misinterpretation of their activities. There has to be a solution, Dr. Cross said, joining the conversation from her xenolinguistic station. Some way to redirect their investigation without exposing the network. Marcus stared at the intelligence reports, seeing 40 years of his grandfather's work about to be destroyed by the same human paranoia and aggression that had created the need for the network in the first place. Then, slowly, an idea began to form in his mind. It was desperate, dangerous, and would require sacrificing everything he'd built, but it might be the only way to save the species they'd worked so hard to protect. Atlas, access Dr. Chen's final research files. The ones he labeled Terminal Protocol. The AI's features shifted, showing what might have been concern. Marcus, you should know that your grandfather considered the Terminal Protocol to be a last resort option, something to be implemented only if all other approaches failed. What is it? Commander Vasquez asked. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of decision settling on his shoulders one last time. It's a plan to solve the alien contact problem permanently, but the cost would be... He paused, trying to find words for what his grandfather had proposed. The cost would be everything we think of as human civilization. The terminal protocol files downloaded into the command center systems, revealing the most radical solution his grandfather had ever conceived. It wasn't just about modifying human contact procedures or protecting individual alien species. It was about fundamentally altering humanity's position in the galaxy. Phase 1 involves complete exposure of the Resistance Network to Colonial Council investigation, Atlas explained as the files opened. Instead of hiding our activities, we reveal everything: the scope of human destructiveness, the evidence of unconscious genocide, the true cost of human expansion. That would destroy us, Dr. Santos observed from her remote connection. Yes, Marcus replied, but it would also destroy the Colonial Council's narrative about alien interference. If they knew the truth about what we've been doing, they'd have to confront the reality of what humanity has become. And Phase 2? Commander Vasquez asked, though her tone suggested she suspected she wouldn't like the answer. Complete disclosure to the galactic community, Atlas continued. We reveal humanity's true nature not just to human authorities, but to every alien species within communication range. We warn them about us, give them our research on human psychological patterns, and provide them with defensive strategies for protecting themselves from cultural contamination. The command center fell silent as the implication sank in. The terminal protocol wasn't just about saving alien species from humanity, it was about saving humanity from itself by forcing a confrontation with its own nature that could no longer be ignored or rationalized away. Phase 3 is the most radical, Atlas said quietly. Voluntary human isolation. Complete withdrawal from alien contact until humanity can demonstrate that it has evolved beyond its destructive tendencies. Marcus studied the protocol, seeing in it both the ultimate expression of his grandfather's moral vision and the complete abandonment of human dreams of galactic civilization. It would save the aliens, but it would end humanity's expansion into the stars, possibly forever. What would happen to human colonies already in contact with alien species? They would be given a choice, Atlas replied. Withdraw from alien territories and accept isolation, or remain and accept supervision by an alien peacekeeping coalition until they could demonstrate sustainable coexistence. You're talking about the end of human independence, Dr. Cross said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm talking about the end of human unconscious genocide, Marcus corrected. The question is whether humanity's freedom to expand is worth the extinction of every other intelligent species in the galaxy. For 3 days, the Resistance Network debated the terminal protocol while Admiral Harrison's investigation closed in around them. Intelligence reports showed OCI forces moving towards several Resistance bases, and it was clear that exposure was imminent regardless of what they decided. The vote, when it came, was closer than Marcus had expected. 57% in favor of implementation, 43% opposed. The network that had formed to save alien species from humanity had decided to save the galaxy from human expansion by exposing the truth that could destroy human civilization as they knew it. Atlas initiate terminal protocol implementation. Full network exposure to begin in 72 hours. Galactic disclosure to follow within 1 week. As the AI began coordinating the most complex intelligence operation in human history, Marcus found himself thinking about his grandfather. Alone in the void for 40 years with the weight of terrible knowledge, William Chen had believed that truth was always preferable to comfortable ignorance, regardless of the cost. Now Marcus was about to test that belief on a galactic scale. The exposure began with a man inherited a derelict space station and a robotic hound. Then the hound uncovered an astonishing truth, HFY.